After several hours of entering the tomb, the Archaic have begun further excavation. To this end, Wilbur Frisk sends a team to the basement level in hopes of discovering more secrets. Unknown to the Archaic, the Tuurngait has been gathering the various entities that resided nearby, unwilling to attack the Archaic immediately. It waited patiently to see if they would leave the tomb. Aside from the objections of Howard the Frisk, everyone supported Frisk's orders to proceed. With that, the Tuurngait made its decision.
And now, it begins.
As the Archaic were preparing for the next operation in the tomb, the entire structure suddenly shook. Within moments, the Archaic personnel were attacked from all directions. The initial attack was devastating for the Archaic security. The remnants attempted to hold the entrance long enough for most of the personnel to escape. While they were successful in allowing the escape of key members such as Wilbur Frisk, the entities soon regrouped and overwhelmed the entire team. With the main floor overrun, the team in the basement found themselves trapped. The Tuurngait virus was then unleashed, presumably infecting every last one of them. Seizing the opportunity, the Tuurngait sent waves of spiders and roaches to drive the Archaic from Site A. It was here that Edward's team was stationed. Fortunately for the Archaic, Edward's team is able to repel the entities, sending them back into the tomb. Edward quickly evacuates all non-security personnel back to the shelter. For the time being, neither side attempts to push forward. A stalemate is in effect. Among the survivors are Wilbur Frisk, Veronica Helix, as well as Darren Gray, all three of which return to their posts. In addition to these three, there were two others, both volunteers in the DNA experiment. Upon their return, they immediately began to exhibit strange behavior. The Archaic wasted no time in quarantining them. This would be the first recorded instance of the Tuurngait virus. During this time, Neil urges Wilbur Frisk to request aid from the central cast. However, the Chief Overseer refuses, believing the situation to be under control. After almost a month of no activity, the Tuurngait, seeing that Edward's team has not left Site A, concludes that the archaic are a threat and must be permanently eliminated. By this time, the entire team in the basement have undergone physical metamorphosis. It is here that the Tuurngait springs the trap. In the technology wing, as Veronica Helix is working on the computer symbiosis experiment, she begins hearing voices in her head. Believing herself to simply be ill, she leaves for her quarters. Once there, she experiences the hallucination. During this time, Darren Gray undergoes a similar process, only his occurs much more rapidly. He then begins screaming and attacking anyone he sees. Security quickly arrives and subdues him. They have him brought to the infirmary, where Neil Oswald examines his condition. With security distracted, Veronica, now infected, leaves her quarters and ventures to the communications tower, where she sabotages the uplink. Neil Oswald, realizing Gray was part of the excavation team, hurries to locate Veronica and Frisk. He finds Frisk in the HQ, acting normal. However, he discovers Veronica's quarters are empty. He finds a bloody handprint on the bathroom mirror. While Neil searches the residential area, Veronica makes her way to the technology wing, where she attacks the scientists. One attempts to lock himself in a closet, only to be cornered and killed. By this point, security is in full alert. Veronica is soon cornered and subdued by the guards. Like Gray, she is brought to the infirmary. With the shelter's communications down, the Tuurngait prepares its next attack. Once again, the Tuurngait strikes Site A in an attempt to reach the shelter. However, despite its superior numbers, Edward's team is once again holding the line. Until... With the entry of the Grey Rock Worms, the Site A defense quickly collapses. Edward himself made a desperate last stand, yet even he would fall in the end. Alas, Site A fell. The Tuurngait, however, was not satisfied. The Tuurngats and other entities quickly began pouring into the mines on their way to the shelter. By this point, Wilbur Frisk realized that the situation was officially out of his control. The Tuurngait sends the rockworms through the mines. Thus they came, leaving large tunnels behind them, which the Tuurngats used to follow. Back in the infirmary, Darren Gray expires. Neil records a report regarding the incident. Soon after, the rockworms reached the shelter, possibly being aided by Veronica, who, being infected, likely served as a beacon for the Tuurngait. Immediately, the Tuurngats pour into the shelter. Security scrambles in an attempt to stop them. For a time, the Tuurngats are contained in the residential wing. During this time, a scientist named Wilbur goes rogue and takes two other lower caste members, Dave and Richard, to the specimen lab, where they gather some of the captured roach specimens. They intend to transport them to the lower level, where they can use them as a defense against any intruders. One of the roaches gets loose during the process and kills Dave. Richard manages to neutralize it shortly after. The two hide out for a time during the outbreak. Another group attacks from the entrances of the mines. They overwhelm the Archaic HQ, cutting off access to the helipad in the process. Wilbur Frisk and the other elevated cast members flee to the research wing, which they make their new headquarters. The infected continue to push further into the shelter. Spiders and roaches begin populating the ventilation systems, while the rockworms make short work of any sealed doors. Seeing the writing on the wall, a scientist named Dr. Roberts flees into the mines, hoping to escape to the surface and find help. The infected quickly seize the storage areas and bypass the mess hall, reaching the cells and infirmary, where they slaughter the defenders, capturing Neil Oswald and freeing the infected members. Neil is spared by both the Tuurngaits and the Tuurngait virus for unknown reasons, instead being locked in a cell. Survivors led by Christopher York managed to barricade the entrance to the morgue, thus halting the infected for a time. During the fight for the residential wing, the Archaic temporarily pushed the infected back, killing several Tuurngaits, one of which is sent to the research wing, where a scientist named Walton Raleigh studies the corpse in an attempt to find a cure. Shortly after, however, the Tuurngait strikes back, and with the help of the rockworms, creates new passages in the walls. The Tuurngaits quickly surround and massacre the defenders in the residential wing. Without delay, they quickly push all the way to the research wing, where they are halted once again. By this point, the remaining survivors in the shelter have begun to form safe rooms, the largest of which is in the mess hall, where a group of scientists including Richard Eminis, Benjamin, Amabel Swanson, and Howard LaFresque hold out. Howard notes how the infected seem to have ignored this group for an unknown reason. The second largest is in the lower levels, where a couple dozen scientists including Eleanor, Winston Egbert, Iman Stanley, and Edmund Frey hold out. They remain in one of the most isolated parts of the shelter. An unnamed scientist flees to the ruined residential wing, where he hides out during the outbreak. In the lower levels, a lone survivor named Alan finds an office which he uses as his safe room. Nearby Alan's office sits the cryo chambers, where a large group of survivors gather. This group includes scientists named Edward Finzi, Myra, Sasha, and Lewis. Christopher York finds himself trapped in the morgue with a group of survivors. They resort to burning the infected corpses, only surviving so long as the barricades to the infirmary hold. In the research wing, Wilbur Frisk, Elof Carpenter, and Garrett Quinn hold out, banking on the remaining security teams and fortifications to hold out long enough for rescue to arrive. In addition, it is here that Walton Raleigh continues working on an antidote using the infected corpse. While the Tuurngait was busy with the Archaic security, Dr. Roberts, having fled into the mines, begins documenting his experiences.
I begin this record still in the hope that the great work we have undertaken here might one day be of scientific value. Despite the chaos which has ensued in the 6 hours previous, my aim is to remain secure until what help there may be arrives. And to that end, I have barricaded myself into a small workshop area in the abandoned part of the mine. I hope that the meager food rations here will help keep me alive, and that those I hide from will not jeopardize that. Perhaps this mine really is cursed. It's almost precisely 30 years since the incident that brought us here, and now, 30 years on, fate has struck again. I forecasted that today the rescue crews would arrive, but I can only hypothesize that they would be unaware of my location, and hence busy themselves evacuating the other survivors. If they have not arrived by tomorrow, I will go out in search of them. My first mistake was to make assumptions on the matter of rescue. My second mistake was to make assumptions on the safety of the mine. My third mistake was to act on both of those assumptions in going outside of my safe haven. My best estimate is that I left the workshop where I was secured about 2 days ago in search of aid, and I have found only danger. I approached the old living quarters, but curiously could find no signs of life whatsoever. I returned in what I thought was the direction from which I had come, but soon found myself in an unfamiliar locale. Confused but focused, I attempted to make my way home, but found myself threatened by some species of feral creature, which seems to have made this old mine its home. Although the specimen bore significant interest to me, I chose to retreat, only to find myself outmaneuvered and outnumbered by the beasts. I turned and ran, injuring my ankle in the process, which I believe now is a sprain rather than a fracture. For some time, I cowered and fled into the dark, but a few hours ago, I discovered a door leading to a smaller, disused part of the mine, the key for which I still have in my pocket. Within that area, I discovered this storeroom, and I think it should keep me safe for some time. This place is a maze. My lesson learned, I will not venture out again until I am certain the area is safe. Rescue seems increasingly unrealistic. Supplies diminishing. Lots of spiders in this place. I do not like spiders.
After some time, the infected gather in the infirmary and manage to break through the barricades separating them from the morgue. They quickly slaughter the survivors in the morgue until Christopher York, alone, remains. Seeing death approaching, he writes one final report.
It seems that the serum we've created was not as perfect as it might seem at the first stages of the experiment. Subjects began to show signs of photophobia, and they carefully tried to hide this from the others. Their skin became grayish, and their weight decreased significantly. The behavior of the subjects has also changed for the worse. They began to show a clear irritability and aggression to the staff at the station. We had to put the Supermen in the special quarantine zone. As for Wilbur, I haven't been able to verify his condition, as he was in another wing of the station. The experiment has failed. We should not have interfered with the natural course of evolution. We have lost our last brink of humanity playing God and condemned those who trusted us to an unimaginable torment. Christopher York.
With the morgue overrun, the infected proceed deeper into the shelter. During this time, Dr. Roberts continues his recordings.
I caught one of the accursed 8-legged beasts nestling in my open mouth when I woke up this morning. In my surprise, I swallowed it. It's not so much the act of swallowing which concerns me, but it's the genus of arachnid. It would be unlikely that a cave-dwelling spider would be venomous to any significant degree, but the possibility still troubles me all the same. Any known venom would have affected me by now, and so today is the first minor cause for celebration that I've had since the incident. By lucky coincidence, this revelation also means that I have discovered a virtually inexhaustible supply of nutrition. I intend to venture into the basement beneath this storeroom in the name of science to discover more about these creatures' natural habitat. For 4 days now, I have been surviving solely off the quite considerable sustenance provided by the spiders. For some time, I was struggling to gather enough of the crunchy little morsels. However, Lady Luck smiled on me once more when the batteries in my torch died and I made a second life-saving finding. These creatures' natural habitat is in the dark. With my light now diminished, I need only lie still for a few minutes, and I have attracted enough of the beast for a rather hearty meal.
Back in the shelter, the Tuurngait virus reaches the lower levels and begins infecting members of the cryo chamber group. A scientist named Myra has a great idea.
Edward, some of our coworkers have been acting weird.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Well, you're our leader. What are we gonna do?
Start praying.
I have a better idea. Let's freeze people!
You're stupid.
Nah, I'm crazy. Now help me out.
Flawless logic. Let's do it! Thus, Myra and Fetsi begin freezing anyone using the cryo chambers who they suspect of being infected. Their aim was to stop the virus progression. Nearby, Alan realizes he is running low on food. He boldly ventures from his safe room. A few hours later, he returns, having successfully gathered supplies. Unfortunately, in the process of doing so, he has become infected. Upon noticing the rash on his neck, he locks himself into a nearby restroom. After holding out for about a month, the infected overrun the research wing. Elof Carpenter manages to escape, while Wilbur Frisk resigns as chief overseer and flees to the kennel. Garrett Quinn accompanies him in order to continue his evaluation. Walton Rowley is more fortunate, as his laboratory is secure and full of rations, allowing him to continue his work on the antidote. Up till this point, he was accompanied by two others, who, upon seeing the infected entering the area, flee to the generator room, hoping to hide there. They are soon discovered, cornered, and killed. In the kennel, Garrett Quinn writes his next report.
June 13th, 2000. Frisk has lost all control. While a number of survivors have fled, and others have holed themselves up in the mess hall, Frisk has chosen to lock himself away in the kennels with the remaining dogs for protection. I have had no choice but to follow him here in order to complete my report.
Elof, having escaped the research wing, flees to the residential wing, presumably finding a new safe room. We now return to Dr. Roberts in the mines.
My earlier assumptions on the benign nature of my cellmates may have been made in error. After a careful autopsy, I am concerned that there may still be a small volume of natural chemicals stored in the stomach, which, if ingested regularly over a period of time, may become psychotropic or even lethal. My only real chance is to break out of here and raid any stashes of supplies I can find. However, the evidence against such a move is insurmountable. 1, I have no source of light. 2, I swore to myself I wouldn't leave until I heard human voices outside. And 3, the spiders are really tasty. From the marks I have been making on the walls and my scribbled diary entries, which in the dark may amount to an ineligible scrawl, today is the 100th day of my new life. Over the past month, my edible friends have become more and more aggressive, and have swelled in number and size. Whether or not this is the result of my plundering of their ecosystem, I am unsure. However, at this rate of growth, they will soon be too large to crawl through the gaps in the walls. For all I know, I could be seeing only the tip of the iceberg. If all fails and I am never recovered, I hope at least my study of, and indeed involvement with, these fascinating creatures will one day be regarded as an important point in natural history. The greatest names in modern science got there more through fluke than talent, and it appears that that rule has extended itself to my discovery of this delicious new species. I only pray that the second rule deems my breakthrough too insignificant, for all great discoveries tend to consume their inventor.
We now return to the group in the cryo chambers. By this point, there are only 4 scientists remaining. However, Edward Finzi and Myra's paranoia has reached an all-time high.
Sasha and Lewis are looking at us weird.
Well, it might have something to do with the fact that every time you say that, you throw someone into the cryo chambers.
No, that can't be it. It's gotta be the virus.
You know what? I have a great idea. Fitzy, having turned on Myra, puts her into a cryo chamber, hoping it will put an end to the paranoia. Okay, we're safe. Problem solved. Hi, Sasha. Why are you looking at me like I'm crazy? His efforts were immediately rewarded by Sasha and Lewis both turning on him and freezing him as well. Returning to Wilmar and Richard, who up till this point have remained safely hidden away in the specimen lab. The two begin to run low on rations. In addition, Wilmar realizes that Richard has begun to act strangely. He decides he is of no further use to him.
Garbage day! Huh? No!
After executing Richard, Wilmar flees from the specimen lab, avoiding the roaches he had released. The unknown scientist, who had previously fled to the ruined residential wing, is forced to relocate after running low on supplies. He makes it to the cafeteria with the goal of reaching the mess hall group. He is met by a locked door and attacked from behind. He is then taken to the cells. Returning to the cryo chamber group, which is now just Sasha and Lewis, Sasha records her thoughts on the current situation.
It's not my habit to keep records, but I need to speak up, and my partner Lewis is not the type of person I can count on. Judging by the results of our experiments on animals, we are unlikely to have any success with people. Personally, I don't have any hope in this whole situation. And after all, when the archaic castle invited me to work here, there wasn't any mention about the virus. Now I deeply regret coming here. Lewis behaves increasingly strange as each day passes. Looks like he also got infected. I try and stay as far away from him as possible, but if this strangeness doesn't stop soon, I'll freeze him, just like the others, and I don't care for the opinion of my colleagues. It might sound cruel, but my life matters the most to me right now.
Soon after writing this, Sasha turns on Lewis, leaving her alone. She inevitably becomes infected shortly after. Back in the kennel, Garrett Quinn continues documenting Frisk's strange behavior.
I've lost all sense of time, but Frisk seems to be almost enjoying himself. He's become very close to the canines. Every day he leaves the compound to forage for food in the main base, which he then feeds to the animals, despite a number of them being infected.
After an unknown period of time, Walton Raleigh completes his work on a formula which he believes is capable of expelling the Tuurngait virus from an individual. In order to send his findings, he needs a working desktop. He carefully exits the lab and evades the roaming infected. Reaching his office, he uploads his data on the network and makes contact with the mess hall survivors. Ever since securing the mess hall, Howard has been hard at work trying to understand the nature of the Tuurngait entity. He is not alone in his endeavor, as Dr. Eminis, as well as Amabel Swanson and her partner Benjamin, have all dedicated their time to understanding the virus. Thus, each one of them became highly educated on this entity. Howard soon writes down all of his conclusions before departing from the mess hall.
Since leaving the last bastion of humanity in this place behind, it has become clear that my faith was well placed, my conclusions were correct, and it is only that which has brought me this far. It has taken me some time to make my way through the infected area of the shelter, and with the observations I have made, my prior discovery seems all the more obvious and vital. The infected humans communicate with one another. Similar, if simpler, communication is observed in infected creatures of all species. At times, the infected seem to coordinate without clear line of sight, telepathy. Despite a catatonic appearance, the infected are quite capable of high-level brain functions. Their problem-solving abilities at times seem to far outstrip those of a healthy human being. When separated, the creatures lose this intelligence, indicating some form of communal or central intelligence. Conclusion: the intelligence displayed is of such a level that we can only assume the communal mind is also rational. It is this conclusion that has formed the backbone of my recent endeavors. Though the infected may wander around like mindless, for want of a better word, zombies, they are no more stupid than a worker bee. Automators, yes, but far from stupid. In short, I believe this central intelligence might somehow be communicated with, bargained with. Communication, however, is most likely impossible once infected, unless there is a way to subdue the infection for long enough to contact the hive. There must be a way to find peace.
After reaching the residential wing, Howard is soon surrounded by Tuurngats, including Veronica.
Howard.
I'm here to negotiate.
You are known to us. We will show you everything.
After communing with the Tuurngait, Howard swiftly enters the library.
Today, I communed with the Tuurngait mind. I was correct. It is intelligent beyond our wildest imagination. It told me everything. Everything I needed to know. You could not imagine it. I cannot accept it. God, forgive us.
As for Dr. Eminus and Dr. Swanson, they each write down several documents regarding their findings. It is likely that they remain in contact with Walton Raleigh during this time, via the intact network. Having completed his formula for the cure, Walton knows he lacks the supplies to remain in the research wing any longer. Taking his chances, he attempts to flee from the research wing. He is never heard from again. With Howard having been gone for several weeks, the group of survivors, 11 in total, vote in favor of attempting to escape into the mines.
You're too late. Sorry. We packed up and left today. It's been 6 months since we established the stronghold, and a year since we released the Tuurngait virus. Clearly, there's no one coming to rescue us. We took a vote and decided to head for the old mine shafts this installation was built over. Right towards the start of the Troubles, one of the scientists got out that way. We haven't heard back from him, but you never know. The vote was 8-3 in favor. Anyone returning to this point, I suggest you do the same. There couldn't be more than a few more survivors out there, even now, and more of our number are disappearing, losing it, or getting infected. You can make it out via the sewers, then into the shafts. Eventually, we'll all have to find a way up and through the ice. We may yet die of cold, but it's better than what happened to Gray. The only person that may still be out there is Howard, kind of our leader. He left base a few weeks ago, and that's part of what led us to this. He converted the kitchen into an office and was translating some old texts when he claimed to have found a way to counteract the disease. I guess he didn't like it.
The entire party heads for the infirmary, aiming to reach the entrance to Site B. Things turn south quickly as they are surrounded by Tuurngaits. Amabel, Eminus, and Benjamin manage to escape back to the shelter. The lone scientist who escapes into the mines ventures for a couple days before realizing he is being hunted by the rockworms. He is soon cornered, and seeing no other option, he ties a noose and takes his own life, rather than being consumed by his pursuers. In the chaos of the infirmary attack, Amabel, Benjamin, and Eminus are each separated. Benjamin and Eminus each find a safe room in the residential wing, while Amabel flees all the way to the research wing, miraculously avoiding the infected as well as the virus. The three of them each find that their new safe rooms have working desktops, which they use to stay in contact. Amabel urges Benjamin to get to her location. He reluctantly agrees. He travels across the surface and makes it to Amabel's office, only to find it locked with a keycard. Amabel herself finds that she is now locked in. Before Benjamin can figure out a way to free her, he is attacked by a Tuurngait, causing him to fall out of a window where he lands in the ice, eventually freezing to death. After fleeing from the specimen lab, Wilmar travels across the shelter, eventually reaching the technology wing, where he finds the computer symbiosis lab. Looking at the computer, he has an idea. On October 10th, 2000, two travelers named Joe Freeman and his friend Jono unknowingly set up camp on the surface above Lake Utakik. They set a fire, with Jono separating to find more firewood. He soon returns in an agitated state, attacking Joe without warning. As he does so, the ground beneath them gives way. Both men fall, landing on opposite sides of Lake Utakik. Joe soon awakes, finding that his pelvic bone is broken. Looking across the lake, he sees Jono trying to cross the ice, but without luck. Without any other option, he activates his radio, begging for help. To his surprise, he gets an answer.
underground lake. There was a landslide and we fell down here. I'm wounded. Johnny, his condition is even worse. Someone please help us.
Lost souls. It seems that Red has guests.
Tom Redwood at last reveals himself. He quickly reassures Joe that he will help them. Thus he sets out through the mines, at one point reaching Site A, where he catches a glimpse of a purple artifact. After finding a way to reach the lake, he begins his return journey, only to be chased by several infected, as well as a rockworm. While Red's story remains shrouded in madness, ultimately, he is unable to reach the two men in time. Jono, in his attempts to cross the lake, falls beneath the ice, where he freezes to death. Joe Freeman bleeds out shortly after. Red continues his story as a prisoner of fate. At some point, presumably during these events, Elof Carpenter is at last captured by the Tuurngait. Back in the kennels, Garrett Quinn once again documents his observations of Frisk.
Frisk has developed some strange symptoms. He's becoming sensitive to light. The slightest light scares him away. He's also displaying almost animalistic tendencies. He's been digging out some of the walls and hiding behind them. Further, I suspect he may be sneaking out of the facility at night, possibly even into the mines. Some of the dogs have turned up dead.
Back in the mines, Dr. Roberts marks his 200th day in the mines.
It has been some time since I recorded any findings in relation to the spiders with whom I have shared my existence for the past 8 months, partly due to my enforced retreat into their basement territory. Not too long ago, their behavior became overtly aggressive, and so I have attempted to barricade the main entrance to their lair and secured myself within one of the smaller rooms above it, the only one with an operational door lock. The other reason is that I have been recovering from a minor operation, which I was forced to conduct myself, without the aid of anesthetic. Even if I did have the anesthetic or surgical tools, I couldn't afford to be less than diligent in my work. So, anesthetic was out. Surgical tools are all well and good, but although it may be becoming old and rusty, I still trust my penknife to do the job just as well. The procedure itself was elementary enough, a simple amputation of a non-vital organ. I began to notice a thick, glue-like substance forming on my tongue, and was forced to accept that it had become infected through constant toxin ingestion.
Elof suddenly awakes, finding himself in a cell. Looking around, he sees a face looking back at him from the door.
Carpenter.
Who's there?
We are.
Who are you?
Why?
Why?
Why did you disturb us?
Veronica.
She is with us.
We are many.
Answer our question.
You may have me in a cell, but you won't learn anything from me.
You rip open our home.
And then deny us justification.
I'm not the one who's possessing an unwilling host.
Like you, she made her choice
When she aided you in opening our tomb.
We were no threat to you.
Wrong. Your presence was a threat of things to come.
This is retaliation and your judgment.
I don't understand. What are you?
Veronica has been forgiven, but your judgment day has come.
Realizing that his death is most likely imminent, Elof quickly records a tape in an attempt to expose the Tuurngait's weakness.
My name, Elof Carpenter. Rank, elevated. Status, Code C, imprisoned. Observing the Tuurngait movement, I predict that it will be my cell they visit next. To my knowledge, I am the last remaining member of the Elevated at this facility, and so it falls upon me to ensure that Xeno protocol is not compromised. For that reason, I record here the only way I have discovered to neutralize the viral threat. The species' primary weakness is dominant. No, please!
Returning once more to the kennel, Garrett Quinn continues recording his disturbing observations on Frisk.
I have been observing Frisk for some time now, and I believe I can conclude my report. Frisk displays outstanding efficiency, though I am now forced to call his judgment into doubt. Despite plenty of rations remaining, I believe he may have begun eating the canines.
Thus Wilbur Frisk, having both injected himself with the DNA serum, as well as having been infected by the Tuurngait virus, began to mutate into a new creature, not connected to the Tuurngait, but rather acting for its own survival. He would be the hunter. Anyone else would be his prey. For several months, the situation in the shelter remained unchanged, with the only remaining group of survivors in the lower levels continuing their efforts to understand the virus, while more and more became infected. It would be here that a new visitor came to the mines.